what is the difference between a career and job? If I ask this to any adult, most adult will probably be able to answer. But if I were to ask student, okay, tell student, they may not be able to see the difference, right? So what is the difference between a career versus a job? Okay, someone mentioned that it's a subset of career. Not too bad, not too bad. I'd like y'all to do let's do a simple exercise, right? Okay, now I wanted to do some interaction, but obviously there's no interaction here. I'm going to talk to myself for the next 1 hour. Okay, now from my years of experience and working with countless of professionals from undergrads all the way to working professional, my most senior client is in his 70s and my most junior client is in his teens. So he's probably about 14, 15 years old. So that is a huge spectrum of clients that I work with. Based on my understanding and interaction with so many individuals. Now, if I were to ask you a question, now for students, especially if you are a student right now, imagine which one would you prefer? Option number one, would you prefer learning something through building something? You know, learning is a process, it's a fun process. You like to learning new things is fun, right? Would you enjoy learning it through, you know, building things, making things, maybe even listening to me or listening to other speakers in the next few days, learning through this kind of mechanism? Do you enjoy it? Okay, versus option number two, do you enjoy learning in the form of exams and tests and countless of grading? We are still very much in the Asia society, and we Singapore, India, wherever we are in Asia, we are still very, very grade focused. So when I talk about exams and tests, probably you'll be able to relate. All right, I'm not saying that they are exactly the same, but I want you to think about the emotion that you bring into it. Now, when you go into exams, tests, doing exams and tests, you may not enjoy it as much, right? But you have to do it. But when you talk about learning a new thing, maybe through experiment, through watching video, through experimenting, you enjoy it. The emotion is different. So the first difference that I like you to think about is the emotion that you bring into a career versus a job. Now, if I were to put it together, a career is something that you pursue based on your interests and your skills, and you are paid for the value that you bring to any organization. Well, even though it's slightly similar to job because both of it you are being paid, but the difference is that career is something that you are interested in, you enjoy doing, the process is enjoyable. But when you're in a job, working for money, the process may not be so enjoyable. Remember the analogy that I gave you between studying for exam versus learning something new. The emotion, the feeling is different. Okay, so that is the first difference between a career and a job. Now, the next difference is that when you talk about career usually is slightly longer term. All right, so it could be 10, 20, 30, 40 years. You are planning your career. Career is a journey. Whereas job itself is just very short term for that particular moment. So just now someone mentioned Shreya, all right, mentioned that job is a subset of career. Not exactly wrong, okay? Because if you think about, if you are playing games, you know, every game has every level, right? Level 1, level 2, level 3, until you reach the highest level. So while conquering every level, okay, that process, the whole process itself, you can think about it as every little level that you pass is like a job that you are doing. But what you want to do is that every job that you are doing is leading you to the next level. You are enjoying the process. All right. So when you talk about career, it's long term. Now, for those of you who are not students, some of my participants here could be adults. All right. Career itself includes paid and unpaid work. Okay, paid work is likely your day work, right? Maybe you are an engineer, maybe you are an accountant, maybe you are a lawyer, maybe you are a software engineer, maybe you are a data scientist. Career itself, when you talk about paid work, is your actual day work that you are being paid for. Unpaid work refers to things that you do out of interest at this point in time. It could be baking, it could be carpentry, it could be painter, it could be musician. Okay, so all this could be an interesting or voluntary, you know, helping the needy. Okay, so when we talk about career, very broad term, it includes paid and unpaid work. Why is it important for you to also think about your unpaid work? Is because when you reach a certain age, when you reach a certain phase of your career, maybe you would like to do a career switch. Maybe you like to do a career transition, and likely you will want to do something that you enjoy. All right. So while you are planning your career, that part of things is also part of career planning. All right. Now, one of the main difference between a career and a job is if you are building your career, you are always looking for ways to become better. How can I be better at this? How can I be more efficient? How can I do better? You are always finding ways. You are always problem solving. You are always very creative to find ways so that you can be a better professional or better worker in that particular profession. So you think about career, that is the difference between that versus a job. For a job, if you are just working for money, purely for money, you will want to avoid it as much as possible. After you are done with your work, you'll be like, okay, I'm done. I'm not going to talk about my work anymore. All right. You don't think about work because you don't enjoy your work as much. Right. So that is one key difference. Now, lastly, when you talk about career versus a job, when you talk about career, planning for your career, building your career, you generally feel more fulfilled. You generally are happier. And if you're talking about a job, because you avoid work so much, okay, you get burned out more often and generally unhappy. Now, the reason why I'm talking about this in this perspective is I need you to identify the differences. And it's important for you to feel fulfilled. It's important for you to feel that you are contributing. All right. You're going to spend 1/3 of your life working. 1/3. Okay. So each one of us have 24 hours, right? You spend 8 hours sleeping. How much time do you spend working or studying? Okay, about 8 hours a day, or maybe even more, depending on which city you are living in. Sometimes the pressure is very high, it's very stressful. You work even longer hours. Imagine you are in a career, in a job that you don't enjoy. You really drag yourself to work. It's not going to be sustainable. All right. So when someone asks me, how can I build a sustainable career for myself? The first question you got to ask yourself is, am I enjoying the work that I'm doing? If I'm not enjoying the work that I'm doing, how can I embark on work that makes me feel more fulfilled and more meaningful? Okay. Right. So that is the first thing about what I want to mention, a career versus a job. Okay. Now, when you understand this part, you are going to understand. Then my next question is this: why career planning is important? Why did Arun and his team put up this whole thing, this 1 week of National Career Awareness Week? Why is the whole world talking about it, especially after COVID? Why? Okay, so I'm going to, I wanted to do a simple poll, but I think it still can happen. All right, so over here, there's 4 options for you. I must plan for my career so that which one will work for you? Is it number 1, so that I can be successful? Number 2, so that I can make my parents happy for some of y'all. Number 3, I can make a lot of money. Or number 4, I can help more people. Which one is it for you? Okay, there is no right, there's no wrong. I just putting this up so that you can start thinking about it. You must plan for your career because all these few points will be valid to you at one point or another in your life. Imagine right now you are having a family. Imagine you have parents to take care or you have kids to take care. You definitely want a good career because you can support your family. You can provide good living condition for your family, right? Now, at a certain age or a certain phase of our life, we definitely also want to give, not just receive, so that we can help more people. Now, you definitely want to be successful, all right? Otherwise, your life doesn't feel like there's a purpose to it. Now, of course, at this point in time, you definitely have to ask yourself a deeper question: is what does success means to you? Okay, does success means that I have a lot of money? Does success means that I have a good team? You know, what is success to you? Okay, so all these things are deeper questions, which I probably will not have enough time to run through in depth. But the purpose of today's session is to really to spark that little thought process in you so that you can start thinking about it. Okay, now all of this, as I mentioned, is valid. But career planning is also very important because you matter and you are important. Okay, there are so many times whereby I witness my clients not happy with the work that they do. Have you heard about all these comments before? When you read articles, they will be say like they will be saying that don't work so hard in your life. Okay, you need to spend more time with your family, your kids. No need to make so much money. Okay, have you heard about all these things? Because in Singapore, I hear about all these things quite often, and I even read a lot of come across articles like that. Now, I'm not saying that the article is wrong, but I would say that the article is very one-sided. Okay, at the end of the day, people regret it's not because of working hard. People regret because they have not been prioritizing. They have not been doing things for themselves also, right? So there's this thing called career wellness. The whole world is talking about mental wellness, overall well-being, correct? Okay, so our overall well-being is made up of 10 dimensions. So there are 10 different dimensions of wellness, and one of it is occupation wellness. Occupation wellness refers to career wellness. All right, so how much you enjoy doing your work, the value, the contribution that you give to the society matters a lot, because psychologically it will affect us as individual. Now, if you go into talking to people, networking, all right, the first few questions that people ask is, what do you do? Correct? Now, even if you are kids, all right, kids talking to each other, sometimes they will also start to ask, hey, what does your father do? What does your mother do? At the end of the day, the value that you bring to this planet Earth, right, is also the work that you do. So career planning is important because it will affect you psychologically. And with that in mind, right, you have to start planning for it. A lot of people plan for their weekend, plan for their holiday, but they never plan their career. They do not know what to look out for. So at this point in time, what are some of the things to look out for when you're planning your career? Number one, should you be in your current occupation, your current role right now? You definitely need to ask yourself, is this the environment that allows me to thrive, that allows me to grow and maximize my potential? Is this the kind of environment, the nurturing environment for me? All right. You also need to ask yourself questions like, the work that you do, is it aligned with your personal interests, personal values and belief system? Those are important questions that you need to ask yourself. Okay. And of course, at the end of the day, you also need to understand, okay, what is next for you. Don't just stay in the job for 10 years without thinking what is next. Okay, the whole world is talking about upscaling, rescaling, new scaling because of COVID. And that happened because it was a very heartbreaking moment, because in Singapore, what happens was that there were so many people being retrenched, being laid off, they become jobless. All right. And some of them are good workers. I have seen their resume. They have been in a particular role for 25 years, 30 years. But when crises like this hit them, they are not able to pivot fast enough. Okay, when I say do a career pivot, they cannot switch fast enough, and therefore they are not able to find the next role. It is a very scary thought, because they suddenly lost that stability, the financial stability. All right. So during COVID itself, we also see a lot of students not able to find a role. And in fact, a lot of students are wondering what's next for them. Okay, so when you are in a role itself, it is not the end, it is the start. You need to understand your career path in the organization. This is what you should be doing when you are in the organization. Figure out what is your career progression like in the organization. Whether is it a vertical progression or lateral progression, you should know what is in it for you. Don't stay in the same role, same job for 10 years without improvement. You will be replaced if you do that. All right. So career planning is very important, because you need to be agile. And it's not just competition within your country, but it's a global competition. I came in about 10 minutes prior to my actual time, and I saw words like globalization. I saw words like, tech industry revolution. So all these things are definitely here to stay. And in fact, only more will come. All right, so this is something that I will encourage all of you all to start thinking about your career. What is it like for you moving forward? And of course, you can break it down 5 years, maybe start with 3 years, 5 years, 8 years. Now, will it always come true? Not all the time, to be honest, because things change, right? Things, unforeseen circumstances can happen, but it is still important to plan because at least you have a roadmap. You are setting yourself up for success. If you don't plan, you will definitely set yourself up for failure. Okay, so just now I mentioned a lot about career itself versus job and what you can do. Another thing that you need to be very aware is you need to be aware of your surrounding. You need to be aware of your environment. You need to be understanding what is macroeconomy. Okay, so I have been in entrepreneurship for the past 7 years. So one thing that entrepreneurship journey has taught me is that sometimes I look at entrepreneurs, I look at business owners, they fall in love with their product, they fall in love with their services, and they forget that that is not what the market needs. So if you are creating a product or services that the market does not need, do you think that is a successful business or a failed business? When there is no demand, it is definitely not a successful one, right? Okay, so when it comes to your career, when it comes to your skills, it's the same thing. If you are very good at printing, like photocopying, if you are very good, you're a very good printer. But right now, in today's context, do people still print a lot of stuff? May not be, right? Then how good you are as a printer does not matter anymore. Even you have 30 years of printing experience, it does not matter because it is no longer relevant. So the keyword here is relevant. You need to start to sit down and ask yourself, hey, are my skills still relevant to today's context? What is happening in the world right now so that I can start building my skills so that I can be relevant, so that I can still stay competitive. All right. So one way to get started to understand the macroeconomy is start to understand industry revolution. Okay, and that is a very good point to start because right now we are not lack of information, right? The moment you fire up a search engine, Google, what's not, you get to get information at your fingertip. But what is missing in the world right now is curated information. So to help you to get started to understand the context of how we have progressed together as a mankind, important for you to start to understand industry revolution. I'm going to run through quickly what industry revolution is about. And after this session, you are most welcome to go and watch more documentary on industry revolution and understand how the skills have changed over the past hundreds of years. Right. So when I start on industry revolution, let's start with this thing called agriculture age. Of course, it's not something that we have witnessed, but of course, when we watch movies, it's something that we've seen in movies, right? All right, so before agriculture age, there's still some more, but that is a bit too far-fetched already. Let's start from here. Now, agriculture age happens around the mid-17th century. Now, this is the time where humans, like ourselves, start to realize that, hey, I can work closely with animals to increase my productivity. Okay, I no longer have to just rely on my own labor. I can get the buffaloes to help me, the horses to help me, right? So this is where agriculture age starts to bloom with the increase of muscle power. All right, we are more productive. Farming becomes more productive. So that is what happens during the agriculture age. Now, agriculture age transformed into the next age where we call industry age 1.0 or industry revolution 1.0, which happened in 18th century. Now, this happened, so previously it was all the muscle power, right? Muscle power. Now, from muscle power, we have transformed into this thing called mechanical power. Now, during 18th century, there is a huge invention that impacted the whole world. Do you all know what is it? It is the steam engine. Okay, so the country that was very, very powerful back in the 18th century is Britain, the Great Britain. All right, because they invented the steam engine. All right, so they use steam to power machine, right? So from muscle become mechanical. You also start to understand any country that possess the next innovation, the next technology will inevitably be a superpower of that time. So 18th century, you have the Great Britain, right? You have a lot of railways and everything. Now, from the 18th century, from Mechanical power, we transform into the 19th to early 20th century industrial age 2.0. This is where we have assembly lines. Do you all remember this scene in movies? Maybe this is where factories start to bloom. Cities start to flourish. We start to have a lot more factories. We start to have assembly lines, division of labor. So mass production happens. And during this period of time, there is also the invention of electricity. Okay, so mass production, electricity happened during that time. And moving forward, which is something that is closer to us, something that we can probably relate is in that Industry Revolution 3.0 is also called Information Age 3.0, which started around 1960. All right, this is the time whereby there's a lot of automation, software, system integrator. Does all this ring a bell? And then you remember the Apple, Microsoft, Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, all the top-notch tech companies right now happen during this period of time. Mainframe computing, IBM, Intel, chips, sensor, all these things happen during 3.0, which is not too far from us actually, right? It's still something that we can relate. In fact, some of us probably have went through this era ourselves, from how we used to have just a 3.5A floppy disk in terms of storage. Right now, then it transformed into thumb drive, and now we have cloud, right? And from big computer and we transform into personal computer. This was the age, and it's something that is still very close to us. Now with COVID, things accelerated. Okay, whether we like it or not, we have already accelerated into Industry Revolution 4.0. Sometimes they also call it the Experience Age 4.0, which happened around 10 years ago. All right, it's very subtle. We couldn't feel the change. We were still thinking we were in 3.0, but we have already stepped into 4.0. Only in recent 3 to 5 years, things start to accelerate. We talk about Web 3.0. We talk about machine learning, AI. All right, we talk about data analytics, big data, data center, cloud architect, infrastructure, system infrastructure. All these big words start to come. You even have bioengineering, biosynthetic, okay, synthetic materials, new materials, smart materials. Okay, so all these words are happening right now. And recently, we also have a lot of blockchain and the metaverse, right? Okay, so why do you need to understand Industry Revolution? Because by understanding Industry Revolution, you know how the world is going. When you know how the world is going, you will figure out what are some of the key skills that you cannot not have. You definitely must have. So if someone comes to me and say that, Samantha, I don't think I need digital skills at all. I'll be fine. Do you really think so? If you are going to stay and want to survive and thrive in the society, you cannot not have digital skills. You cannot not know how to understand a little bit of analytics. You cannot not know how to read dashboards. Okay, so every single role will be disrupted, including my role. Right now I'm speaking, I will be disrupted, but to what degree will I be disrupted? So the question that you got to ask yourself is, yes, disruption is here. Let's not resist it. Okay, let's not resist it. Disruption is here. But what can you do now, okay, so that disruption is kept to the minimum? If you cannot be a super creator, meaning to say you cannot be the programmer, the engineer, you know, not all of us can be a good programmer, right? Myself, for one, I came from an engineering background, but I don't think I'm a good engineer. So I don't think I'll enjoy coding. But if you cannot be a super creator, the question is, how can you also be a super user? You must know how to use these tools and technology to help you. All right, so this is Industry Revolution. If you really want to read up a little bit more, I really encourage you to go and understand more about the macro economy before you start to do skills upgrading. Don't just upgrade for the sake of upgrading. All right, don't just upgrade because everybody says so. You need to understand what is happening. Okay, now what is next? Okay, so someone asked me how much time will I be taking. I think I'm coming to an end very soon. Okay, but I'll spend more time taking more questions. I think that will be a lot more useful. So, okay, so here are some things that I will encourage all of you, including students who are tuning in, to do. Now, if you do not know, let's say for the students, right? If you do not know how to start planning your career, the first thing that you should do is start reading up about the different careers out there. You need to do some research. Parents who are tuning in or educators who are tuning in, this is how you can empower the next generation. They cannot be sheltered. They need to understand what is happening out there. Besides a doctor, engineer, lawyer, accountant, and teacher, what else out there? You need to start reading, you need to start researching. This is the first thing that you can do immediately without any money, without any cost, and you should do that. Okay, read up about the different careers, all right, and the scope. What is it like on a day-to-day basis if you take up this role? Okay, go and figure it out. Go and read. The second thing that you need to do is you need to start talking to people in different occupation. After you read, it is important for you to start to engage with these people. Now, one very good example is, even events like this kind of conferences and seminars like this, it's very good for you to start talking and networking with people. Go and ask them, hey, what does a career coach do? Hey, what does a software engineer does? Okay, what does whatever do? Okay, understand. Hearing it from the practitioner themselves is definitely more insightful than just reading purely without any conversation taking place. Yeah. And the next thing that you should do is I need you to do some self-assessment to discover your interests, your values, your personality, and your empathy. Okay, so there are a couple of free assessment tools in the market out there on the website. Okay, I will encourage you to start doing some assessment right now. If let's say the institutions have assessment tools, this is something that students, I will encourage you to go and do. After you have done the assessment, don't just do the assessment and do nothing about it. After you have done the assessment, read the report and you need to decode the report. So take out a piece of paper from the report. Okay, take out a piece of paper and read the report. Okay, the report says that my interest could be this. So write down. My values, things that I value could be this, write down. My personality. So when you talk about personality, you will usually revolve around a few things. How do you interact with people? This is important. Communication. How do you communicate with people and how do you like people to communicate with you? Write that down. Okay, the environment. What kind of environment, work environment suits you and what kind of work environment most likely is a place that you do not like. Okay, write that down. Write that on a piece of paper and read that piece of paper. Does it make sense to you? And you can get, you can take reference with one or two more assessment too, or you can actually get the people around you closest to you to have an assessment. Does this make sense? Is this really me? Okay, I need you to do some validation. Don't just take the assessment report wholesale. It will not be healthy and I really don't encourage you to do that. Okay, so this is the 3 things that you can do immediately and it's free. Okay, you don't need to pay a single cent and you can get a good assessment for yourself.